In 2018, a true story shocked the United States. 13 siblings were held captive by their own parents, chained, starved, and beaten for years in an ordinary house in California. The world only learned the truth when one child managed to escape. This story is inspired by these true events, and what could have happened if she had found help sooner. If this story moves you, please hit the like button and share your thoughts below. A 7-year-old with chain marks approached a biker at a gas station and whispered words that would expose California's worst abuse case. What he discovered shocked an entire state. 3 a.m. Jake Razor Mitchell pulled his Harley into a gas station off Highway 60, 40 miles outside Riverside. At 42, Jake was 6'2", 240 pounds, covered in tattoos. His Hells Angels vest bore the patch with pride. The gas station was nearly empty. Just Jake, a tired clerk, and fluorescent lights. Then he saw her. A small figure emerged from the shadows. A child, maybe 7, barefoot, wearing a filthy nightgown, painfully thin, skeletal. She walked straight toward him. Jake's combat instincts kicked in. Something was very wrong. The girl stopped 10 feet away, swaying. In the harsh light, Jake could see bruises covering her arms, matted hair, but what made his blood run cold were her wrists, angry red marks circling them, chain marks. "Please, senor," the girl whispered weakly, "please don't take me back. My brothers and sisters are still there, chained. They're going to die if nobody helps." Jake crouched down. "Hey, sweetheart, what's your name?" Sophie Marshall. I'm 7. I ran away, but they're still there in the basement, chained to the walls. Please, you have to help them." "Who's still there?" "4 of them. Mom and Dad don't feed us. They hit us. Sophie's legs gave out. She collapsed. Jake caught her before she hit the ground. She weighed almost nothing, maybe 25 pounds. He could feel every bone. "Stay with me," Jake said, pulling out his phone. He dialed 911. "I need an ambulance and police at the Shell station, Highway 60, mile marker 42. Severely malnourished child, possible abuse. She's saying there are more kids being held somewhere." The operator was urgent. "Is the child conscious?" "Barely. She's got chain marks on her wrists and ankles. Looks like she hasn't eaten in weeks." "Ambulance is en route." Sophie's eyes fluttered. "Please, the house, 2847 Cypress Lane. They're in the basement. Please go get them." "I promise, sweetheart. We're going to get them. I'm scared if Mom and Dad find out. They're not going to hurt you ever again, I promise." Within 6 minutes, sirens filled the night. Ambulance, 3 police cars, a fire truck. Paramedics began working on Sophie immediately. Deputy Sarah Torres approached Jake. "You called it in?" "Yeah." "Jake Mitchell. She came out of nowhere." "Did she say where she came from?" 2847 Cypress Lane. Says there are 4 more kids chained in a basement. Says her parents did it." Torres went pale. "Cypress Lane, that's upper middle class. Are you sure?" "Look at her wrists, Deputy. Those are chain marks." Torres looked at Sophie on the stretcher. Even from a distance, the marks were visible. "Jesus. Okay, I'm calling this in and getting a warrant. You'll need to give a statement." "I'm not going anywhere." As the ambulance pulled away, Sophie looked back at Jake. She mouthed, "Thank you." Jake called Reaper, the chapter president. "We got a situation, big one." He explained everything. When he finished, Reaper was silent. "You're at the gas station still?" "Yeah, giving a statement. We're coming, all of us. If there are more kids, if the cops need help, we're there." Within 40 minutes, 18 Hells Angels arrived. Reaper approached Deputy Torres. "Jake Mitchell is one of ours. We're here to offer assistance." Torres looked wary. "This is a police matter." Sergeant Bill Crawford studied Reaper. "You guys serious?" "Dead serious. We've got veterans, EMTs, former law enforcement. We can help." Crawford looked at Torres. "Sarah, we're waiting on a warrant anyway. Could be hours. And if this girl's telling the truth, we'll need more than 3 deputies." "I say we take the help." Torres nodded. "Okay, but you follow our lead." "Understood." At 5:30 a.m. the warrant came through. A convoy formed. 3 sheriff's vehicles, 1 ambulance, 1 fire truck, and 18 motorcycles. They drove to Cypress Lane. The house at 2847 was upper middle class, well-maintained, manicured lawn, a cross planted prominently in the front yard, a sign, "The Marshall family. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." The irony made Jake sick. Deputy Torres knocked. No answer. She knocked again, louder. "Sheriff's Department, we have a warrant." A light turned on. Footsteps. The door opened to reveal a man in his 40s, average height, glasses, bathrobe. He looked like an accountant. "Can I help you?" "Are you David Marshall?" "Yes, what's this about?" "We have a warrant to search these premises. Step outside." David showed confusion, then concern. "Search for what?" "We have a report that children are being held here against their will." "Are there children in this house?" "Of course, 5 of them. They're my children. They're asleep upstairs." "Where's the basement?" David's expression changed, just for a second. Fear. "We don't use the basement. It's just storage. We're going to need to see it anyway." "I don't consent to—" Torres held up the warrant. "You don't have a choice. Officers, secure the house." Deputies moved past David. A woman appeared at the stairs. Jennifer Marshall, mid-30s, thin nightgown. "David, what's happening?" "Ma'am, come downstairs," Torres said. The upstairs revealed nothing. Clean bedrooms, family photos, religious iconography. It looked normal, wholesome, until they found the basement door. It was locked, not with a regular lock, but with a heavy-duty padlock. "Keys," Torres demanded. "I don't have them. We lost them years ago." "Break it," Torres ordered. Crawford used bolt cutters. The lock snapped. He opened the door. The smell hit them first. Human waste, rot, unwashed bodies. Torres descended, flashlight out. What she saw at the bottom made her freeze. 4 children, 3 girls and 1 boy, ages 5 to 11, all chained to walls by wrists and ankles. All skeletal, filthy, covered in bruises and sores, wearing rags. The smallest one, a girl who couldn't be more than 5, was unconscious. "Jesus Christ," Torres whispered, then louder, "I need paramedics down here now, and arrest the marshals." The basement erupted into chaos. Paramedics rushed down. Jake and 3 Hell's Angels followed, helping with lights, making space. Jake knelt beside the smallest girl, while a paramedic worked on her chains. "Hey, sweetheart, you're safe now. We're getting you out." The girl's eyes opened slightly, too weak to speak. "Got it," the paramedic said, removing the final chain. "She needs a hospital immediately. Severe malnutrition, possible organ failure." One by one, the children were freed and brought up. The Hell's Angels helped carry them when they were too weak to walk. None spoke. They just stared with huge, hollow eyes. Upstairs, David and Jennifer Marshall were in handcuffs, protesting. "This is religious persecution," David shouted. "We're Christian parents exercising our right to discipline." "Discipline?" Torres's voice was ice. "You chained them in a basement and starved them. The Bible says spare the rod, spoil the child. The Bible doesn't say chain your kids and let them live in filth. You're going to prison." The children were loaded into ambulances. Neighbors emerged. A crowd formed, watching in horror. "I knew something was wrong," one neighbor said. "I heard sounds sometimes, but David said they were homeschooling. I should have called someone." "We all should have," another added quietly. Jake stood beside the ambulance holding the youngest girl. She'd latched onto his hand and wouldn't let go. The paramedic looked at him. "She trusts you. Can you ride with us?" "Yeah." At the hospital, all 5 children were taken into emergency care. Sophie was stable but severely malnourished. The others were worse. The youngest, Emily, was in critical condition. Jake stayed with Emily. She wouldn't release his hand. "You can stay," a doctor said gently. "She clearly feels safe with you." Hours passed. The Hell's Angels waited in the lobby, refusing to leave until they knew the kids were okay. A social worker named Margaret Chen approached them. "Why are you all still here?" Reaper stood. "Those kids came to us for help." "We don't abandon people who ask us for help. But you're—" She stopped herself. "We're Hell's Angels. We know what we look like. But we also know what it's like when nobody gives a damn about you. These kids needed someone to give a damn. So here we are." Margaret studied them. The youngest one, Emily, She won't let go of your friend's hand. She needs stability. Jake Mitchell, he's willing to stay, as long as she needs him. That's extraordinary. That's family. And those kids are ours now. By evening, the story broke nationally. House of Horrors in Riverside. 5 children rescued from basement prison. News vans filled the street. Reporters tried to get statements. But the Hells Angels created a barrier. Nobody got to the kids. The bikers stood guard, silent and immovable. Inside, Jake sat with Emily. She was awake now, IV in her arm, 7 years old but looked 4, weighed 32 pounds. "What's your name?" Emily whispered, her first words. "Jake, what's yours?" "Emily, are you going to leave?" "Not unless you want me to." "I don't want you to. When people leave, bad things happen." Jake's heart broke. "Emily, the bad things are over. Your parents are in jail. They're never going to hurt you again. You're safe now." "Sophie? Is Sophie okay?" "Sophie's in this hospital. She's getting better. She saved you. She was so brave." Tears rolled down Emily's face. "She said she was going to, but I didn't think she could. She did. She found me, and I found you, and now you're all safe." Margaret Chen entered. "Jake, can I speak with you?" Outside, Margaret said quietly, "We have a problem. All 5 children need foster placement. But they're so traumatized that most foster families won't be equipped, and they shouldn't be separated. But finding a placement that can take 5 severely abused children." She trailed off. "What are the options?" "Group home, most likely." "What if there was another option? The club, the Hells Angels. We've got members with big houses, experience with trauma." Margaret looked skeptical. "Place foster children with a motorcycle club?" "Emily won't let go of me. Sophie trusted us. Maybe we're exactly what these kids need. People who'll protect them no matter what." "That's highly irregular. I'd have to get approval, run background checks." "Then do it. Because right now, those kids trust us more than anyone else. And after what they've been through, trust is everything." Margaret hesitated. "Let me make some calls." 3 days later, an emergency hearing was held. David and Jennifer Marshall were there in orange jumpsuits, facing charges of torture, child endangerment, false imprisonment, attempted murder. Judge Ronald Patterson presided. "Ms. Chen, what's the recommendation?" Margaret stood. "Your Honor, this is unprecedented. These 5 children have suffered extreme abuse. They're traumatized and terrified of authority. However, they've formed an attachment to the Hells Angels members who rescued them. I've conducted emergency home studies of 2 club members, Reaper Collins and Jake Mitchell. Both have clean records, stable homes. I'm recommending temporary placement with these individuals under CPS supervision." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. The prosecutor stood. "Your Honor, placing vulnerable children with a motorcycle gang." "They're not a gang," Margaret interrupted. "They're a club, and they've shown more commitment than anyone else." Judge Patterson looked at Jake. "Mr. Mitchell, stand up." Jake stood. "You found the first child, Sophie Marshall?" "Yes, sir." "And you've been staying with Emily at the hospital for 3 days straight?" "Yes, sir." "Why?" Jake looked the judge in the eye. "Because she asked me to. Because she's scared and she needs someone who'll keep his promises. I promised her I wouldn't leave, so I haven't." "Now, and you're willing to take responsibility for these children?" "All 5 of them, if that's what they need." Judge Patterson was quiet. "This is highly unusual, but these circumstances are highly unusual. I'm granting temporary custody of the 5 Marshall children to CPS, with residential placement approved for Jake Mitchell and Reaper Collins, subject to weekly supervision. This is temporary, pending full investigation." He looked at the Marshalls. "As for you 2, bail is denied. You're remanded to custody pending trial. And I hope you spend the rest of your lives in prison." As the Marshalls were led away, Jennifer screamed, "They're our children!" "You already took everything from them," the judge said coldly. "Now you have nothing." That night, the 5 children were released into the care of Jake and Reaper. They stayed at Reaper's house, a large ranch with enough bedrooms for everyone. Sophie, Emily and their 3 siblings, Michael, 9, Sarah, 8, and Anna, 6, sat together in the living room, clean for the first time in years, wearing new clothes, fed properly. "Are you really going to keep us?" Sophie asked Reaper. "As long as you need us. This is your home now. You're safe here. Nobody's going to hurt you. You're free." Emily walked over to Jake and climbed into his lap. "Promise?" "I promise, kiddo. You're stuck with us now." For the first time in their lives, all 5 children smiled. The battle wasn't over. There would be therapy, legal proceedings, years of healing. But for the first time, these children had protectors who meant it, family who cared, and a future that didn't include chains and darkness. And it all started because a 7-year-old girl was brave enough to ask the scariest-looking man she'd ever seen for help. The first week at Reaper's house was both beautiful and heartbreaking. The 5 Marshall children had to learn how to be children again. Simple things like sleeping in a bed, using a bathroom, eating at a table were foreign concepts. Emily refused to sleep alone. She'd wake up screaming, convinced she was back in the basement. Jake started sleeping on the floor of her room, hand extended so she could hold it through the night. Sophie had nightmares where she relived the escape. She'd wake up convinced she'd failed, that her siblings were still chained. Margaret Chen arranged for trauma therapists to visit daily. Michael, the 9-year-old boy, didn't speak for the first 3 days. When he finally did, it was to ask Jake, "Are you going to chain us when we're bad?" Jake's heart shattered. "Michael, there are no chains here. You're never going to be chained again. And you're not bad. You were never bad. What your parents did to you was evil, but you're just a kid who deserves to be safe. But Dad said we were sinful, that we needed to be punished to save our souls. Your dad was wrong, and he's in jail now, where he belongs." Sarah and Anna, 8 and 6, were inseparable. They'd spent so long chained side by side in the basement that being apart for even minutes caused panic attacks. The therapist said this was normal. They'd bonded in captivity as a survival mechanism. Margaret Chen visited every other day, documenting progress, checking conditions. On day 5, she pulled Jake aside. "I need to tell you something. The prosecutor's building the case against the Marshalls. They want the children to testify. They're not ready for that." "I know. But the defense is claiming the children are making false allegations, that they've been coached. The prosecutor needs their testimony to counter that." "When?" "Preliminary hearing is in 2 weeks. The kids will have to face their parents in court." Jake felt rage building. "Those children have been through enough." "I know, but it's the only way to make sure the Marshalls never get near them again. If we don't have solid testimony, there's a chance, small but real, that they could get reduced charges or even acquittal. That's not happening. I'll make sure the kids are ready." That night, Jake gathered all 5 children in the living room. Reaper sat beside him. The kids looked nervous. "Hey guys," Jake said gently, "we need to talk about something important. In 2 weeks, there's going to be a court hearing. You're going to have to tell a judge what happened to you. Your mom and dad will be there." Emily's eyes went wide with terror. No, I can't see them. Please don't make me." Jake pulled her into his lap. "I know it's scary, but they're going to be in handcuffs. They can't touch you, they can't hurt you. And we'll be right there with you the whole time." "What if they take us back?" Sophie whispered. "They won't. They're going to prison. But the judge needs to hear from you, needs to understand what happened, so they can make sure your parents never hurt anyone again." "What do we have to say?" Michael asked. "The truth. Just tell the judge what life was like in that house, what they did to you. I know it's hard, but you're the bravest kids I've ever met. You survived years of hell. You can survive a few hours in a courtroom." Over the next 2 weeks, the therapist worked with the children, preparing them for testimony, role-playing the courtroom, teaching them it was okay to cry, okay to be scared, okay to ask for breaks. The Hells Angels took shifts at the house, making sure the kids were never alone. Tank taught Michael how to work on motorcycles. Chains taught Sarah how to cook. Ghost took Anna to the park and let her be a kid for the first time. And slowly, carefully, the children began to heal. But the night before the hearing, Emily had the worst nightmare yet. She woke up screaming at 2 a.m., convinced she was being chained again. Jake rushed in, scooped her up, held her while she sobbed. "I can't do it," Emily cried. "I can't see them. I can't." "Yes, you can. You know why? Because you're not alone. Tomorrow, when you walk into that courtroom, you're going to have 20 Hell's Angels behind you. And we're all going to be thinking the same thing, that you're the bravest little girl in the world, and nothing your parents say or do can change that. Promise you won't let them take me?" "I promise. On my life, I promise." The courthouse was packed. National media had descended on Riverside. The House of Horrors case had captured the nation's attention. Everyone wanted to see the monsters who'd chained their children in a basement. Outside, 20 Hell's Angels formed a protective wall around the 5 children as they entered. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, but the bikers kept moving, shielding the kids from the chaos. Inside, Judge Patterson's courtroom was standing room only. David and Jennifer Marshall sat at the defense table in orange jumpsuits, looking haggard. Their lawyer, a sharp-dressed man named Robert Kemp, exuded expensive confidence. The prosecution was led by District Attorney Lisa Martinez, a veteran prosecutor known for her passion for child abuse cases. "Your Honor," Martinez began, "the state will prove that David and Jennifer Marshall subjected their 5 children to systematic torture, starvation, and imprisonment over a period of 4 years. We have physical evidence, medical records, and the testimony of the victims themselves." Kemp stood. "Your Honor, the defense will show that the Marshalls are devout Christians who use strict but legal discipline methods. The children, traumatized by their mother's strict religious teachings, have fabricated these allegations with the help of outside influences, specifically members of a criminal motorcycle gang who have their own agenda." Jake felt his hands clench into fists. Reaper put a warning hand on his shoulder. "Stay calm. Let the truth speak." The prosecution called its first witness, the paramedic who treated Sophie at the gas station. He described her condition: severely malnourished, dehydrated, covered in bruises, chain marks on her wrists and ankles. "In your professional opinion, were these injuries consistent with accident or normal childhood play?" "No. These were consistent with prolonged abuse and restraint." Next came Deputy Torres, who described finding the 4 children chained in the basement. The courtroom gasped as she detailed the conditions: the smell, the filth, the children's skeletal frames. Then Dr. Rachel Kim, the physician who'd treated all 5 children at the hospital. She presented medical evidence, X-rays showing healed fractures that had never been properly set, malnutrition so severe it had stunted their growth, dental problems from years of neglect. "These children," Dr. Kim said, her voice shaking with emotion, "showed signs of torture, not discipline, torture." Finally, Martinez called Sophie to the stand. The 7-year-old walked to the witness stand, Jake beside her for support. She looked tiny in the chair. She was sworn in, her small hand on the Bible. "Sophie," Martinez said gently, "can you tell the judge about the basement?" Sophie's voice was barely audible. "We were kept down there, all 5 of us, chained to the walls." "How long were you chained each day?" "All day, all night. They only unchained us to use the bucket." "The bucket?" "For bathroom. We didn't have a toilet." "What did you eat?" "Bread, sometimes, and water, but not every day. Sometimes they forgot. Or sometimes they said we were too sinful to deserve food." "Did your parents ever hit you?" Sophie nodded, tears streaming. "Dad used a belt. Mom used her hands. They said we were evil, that we needed to be punished to save our souls." "Sophie, why did you run away that night?" "Because Emily was getting worse. She wasn't waking up anymore. I thought she was going to die. I had to get help. And you found help. You found Jake. What made you trust him?" "He looked scary, but his eyes were kind, and I thought someone that big and strong could protect us from Dad." Kemp stood for cross-examination. "Sophie, you love your parents, don't you?" "No. The bluntness of it shocked the courtroom. But they're your parents. They took care of you. They chained us. They starved us. They hurt us. That's not taking care. Isn't it possible you're exaggerating because you want to stay with the bikers? Because they give you freedom your strict parents didn't? I'm not exaggerating. Look. Sophie pulled up her sleeve, showing the scars on her wrists. These are from chains, real chains. My parents did this. They're not strict. They're evil. Kemp tried again. Your parents have testified they were following their religious beliefs. God doesn't tell people to chain their kids and let them starve. If my parents think God told them to do that, then they're crazy. Judge Patterson intervened. Mr. Kemp, do you have further questions for this witness? No, Your Honor. One by one, the other children testified. Michael described being beaten for crying. Sarah described watching Emily nearly die from starvation. Anna, the 6-year-old, broke down completely when asked about the chains. By the time Emily testified, describing the day Sophie escaped, how she thought her sister would be caught and killed, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Even the judge had to call a recess. During the break, David and Jennifer Marshall tried to approach their children in the hallway. The Hells Angels immediately formed a wall, blocking them. "Those are our kids," David snarled. "Not anymore," Reaper said coldly. "You lost that right when you chained them in a basement. We were disciplining them according to scripture. You were torturing them. There's a difference, and you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison learning that difference." After testimony concluded, Judge Patterson didn't even leave the bench to deliberate. "I've heard enough. David and Jennifer Marshall, you are hereby bound over for trial on all charges. Bail remains denied. And I'm issuing a permanent restraining order. You are never to contact these children again. Ever." He looked at the 5 children who sat together holding hands. "Sophie, Emily, Michael, Sarah, Anna, you are the bravest children I've ever seen. What was done to you was evil, but you survived. You escaped, you saved each other, and now you're going to have the life you always deserved. This court is adjourned." The trial lasted 3 weeks. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes before returning a verdict, guilty on all counts. David Marshall was sentenced to life without parole. Jennifer received 50 years. Both would die in prison. As they were led away in handcuffs for the final time, Jennifer screamed at her children, "You're going to hell, all of you! You betrayed your own parents!" Sophie stood up in the courtroom. "We didn't betray you. You betrayed us. And if there's a hell, you're going there, not us." The courtroom erupted in applause. After the trial, the question became permanent placement. The children had been with Jake and Reaper for 3 months now. They'd bonded, healed, started to become normal kids. Margaret Chen sat with Jake and Reaper. "I've been authorized to ask you something. The children don't want to be split up. They want to stay together, and they want to stay with you. Would you consider permanent foster care or even adoption?" Jake looked at Reaper. They'd talked about this possibility. "All 5 of them?" "All 5. I know it's a lot." "Yes," Jake said immediately. "Whatever paperwork needs to happen, whatever inspections, whatever requirements, yes. These kids are ours. They've been ours since the night Sophie grabbed my hand at that gas station. I'll start the process. It'll take time. Background checks, home studies, training. But I think we can make this work." 6 months later, in a small ceremony at the courthouse, Jake Mitchell and Reaper Collins officially became the legal guardians of Sophie, Emily, Michael, Sarah, and Anna Marshall, whose last name was legally changed to Mitchell Collins. The children stood in the courtroom wearing matching vests, child-sized Hells Angels cuts that read, "Property of Hells Angels MC, Protected Family." Judge Patterson, who'd overseen the case from the beginning, smiled. "This is the most unusual family I've ever seen, but it's also one of the strongest. Jake Reaper, you've done something extraordinary. You've given these children their lives back." "They gave us something too," Jake said. "They taught us that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when it matters." 2 years later, the Marshall children were thriving. Sophie was 9, excelling in school, and wanted to be a lawyer. Emily was 9, healthy, and learning to ride motorcycles with Jake. Michael was 11 and working on his first car engine with Tank. Sarah was 10 and had joined the school choir. Anna was 8 and had just won a spelling bee. On the anniversary of their rescue, the Hells Angels threw a party at the clubhouse. The 5 children sat together, surrounded by bikers who'd become their uncles, their family, their protectors. "You know what's crazy?" Sophie said to Jake. 2 years ago, I was so scared when I saw you at that gas station. You looked so mean and dangerous. And now I know you're the best dad anyone could ask for." Jake felt his throat tighten with emotion. "You know what's even crazier? 2 years ago, I thought my life was complete. I had my club, my brothers, my bike. I didn't think I needed anything else. But then this scared little girl grabbed my hand and asked for help, and my whole world changed. Are you glad it changed? Every single day." Emily climbed into Jake's lap. "Tell us the story again, about the night Sophie found you." Jake smiled. He'd told this story 100 times, but the kids never got tired of hearing it. "Okay, it was 3 a.m. and I was at a gas station." As Jake told the story about a brave little girl who escaped hell and found help in the most unlikely place, the other children listened with rapt attention. Even though they'd lived it, even though they knew every detail, they loved hearing it told. Because it wasn't just the story of their rescue, it was the story of their rebirth. The story of how 5 children who'd been treated as worthless discovered they were priceless. The story of how the scariest-looking men in California became the most loving fathers anyone could imagine. And it was the story of how sometimes the most unlikely heroes are exactly the heroes we need. The Marshall children grew up strong, loved and safe. They went to college, they built careers, they started families of their own. But no matter where life took them, they always came back to the clubhouse, to Jake and Reaper, to the Hells Angels who'd saved their lives and given them a future. And whenever they told their children about their childhood, they always ended with the same words Sophie had spoken in court. The bikers weren't scary. They were our heroes. They still are. Because sometimes the most terrifying-looking people have the biggest hearts. Sometimes the ones society fears are the ones who show up when everyone else looks away. Sometimes asking the scariest person you've ever seen for help is the bravest thing you can do. And sometimes that's exactly what saves your life.